Picture this. You're standing at the edge of a vast ocean, watching waves stretch endlessly toward the horizon. But what if I told you that somewhere impossibly far beyond what your eyes can see, that ocean might simply stop? Not gradually, not gently, but with the sharpness of a knife's edge, where water meets absolute nothingness. This is the paradox that has haunted mathematicians, physicists, and philosophers for thousands of years. The question of whether infinity itself could have boundaries. Welcome to Science, where we explore the mysteries that dance at the very edges of human understanding. Tonight, we're embarking on a gentle journey into one of the most profound questions ever pondered. Does infinity have an edge? We'll drift through the cosmic landscapes where mathematics meets reality, where the finite touches the infinite, and where your mind can wander freely among concepts so vast they dwarf even the largest galaxies. If this exploration feels right to you, consider joining our community of fellow travelers. Subscribe if it brings you peace, and let us know in the comments where in the world you're listening tonight, and what time it is as you settle into this journey. Your presence, wherever you are, becomes part of this shared moment of wonder. Now, dim the lights, settle into your most comfortable position, and let's drift into tonight's journey through the endless paradox of space and time. You find yourself floating in a space that exists beyond space, in a moment that stretches beyond time. Here, in this realm of pure thought, you can contemplate concepts that would make the largest supercomputers pause in contemplation. The question before you isn't just academic. It touches something fundamental about the nature of existence itself. When we speak of infinity, are we describing something real, or are we simply pushing language to its breaking point? Let your mind settle into this question like a stone sinking through still water. Infinity. That word itself seems to contain multitudes. The symbol we use, the figure 8 lying on its side, suggests an endless loop, a path that curves back on itself forever. But even this symbol, elegant as it is, cannot capture the full mystery of what infinity might actually mean when it encounters the edges of reality. Consider the universe around you as you rest tonight. Every breath you take contains oxygen atoms that have existed for billions of years, cycling through countless other lungs, dissolved in ancient seas, locked in rocks that have crumbled to dust and reformed as new stones. These atoms carry within their quantum structure the memory of their birth in the hearts of dying stars, forged in temperatures so extreme that matter itself becomes a kind of cosmic poetry. The distances these atoms have traveled dwarf human comprehension. Some have wandered across galactic arms, drifted through the cold emptiness between star systems, been caught in gravitational dances around black holes whose mass bends space and time into impossible geometries. Yet for all these vast journeys, these atoms now rest quietly in your lungs as you breathe slowly and deeply, connecting you to infinity in the most intimate way possible. But here's where the mystery deepens, like walking into a forest where each step reveals new layers of complexity hidden within apparent simplicity. When astronomers point their most powerful telescopes toward the edge of the observable universe, they encounter something unexpected. They don't find a wall, a barrier, or even a gradual fading into nothingness. Instead, they find a horizon, a limit to what they can see, imposed not by the universe itself, but by the finite speed of light and the finite age of the cosmos. This cosmic horizon shifts and breathes like a living thing. Every second that passes, light from more distant regions reaches our telescopes, pushing that horizon a little further outward. It's as if you were standing in a gradually expanding bubble of visibility, where the walls aren't physical barriers but temporal ones, boundaries created by time itself rather than space. You might imagine this horizon as a kind of cosmic shoreline, where the known meets the unknown in an endless dance of revelation. But unlike any earthly shore, this one moves not with tides or weather, but with the patient passage of cosmic time. Each moment brings new photons that have been traveling for billions of years, carrying information about galaxies and stars, and events that happened when the universe was young and strange and utterly unlike the cosmos we know today. The mathematics of infinity adds another layer to this contemplation, like discovering that the forest path you're walking branches not just left and right, but up and down, and into dimensions your senses cannot directly perceive. Mathematicians have discovered that there are different sizes of infinity, a concept so counterintuitive that it took centuries for human minds to fully grasp its implications. The smallest infinity, if we can use such a seemingly contradictory phrase, is the infinity of counting numbers. 1, 2, 3, and so on, stretching forever without end. This infinity has a name, Aleph Null, and it represents the kind of endlessness that feels most familiar to us. It's the infinity of stars in the sky, if stars were truly infinite. It's the infinity of moments in time, if time stretched backward and forward without beginning or end. But then there are larger infinities, vast beyond even infinite comprehension. The infinity of all possible decimal numbers between 0 and 1. The infinity of all possible curves that could be drawn on an infinite plane. The infinity of all possible universes that might exist in the vast landscape of cosmic possibility. Each of these infinities contains the smaller ones like nested dolls, yet remains fundamentally different, unreachably larger than those it contains. As you contemplate these layered infinities, you might feel a gentle sense of vertigo, not unpleasant but profound. It's the feeling of standing at the edge of human understanding and peering into depths that have no bottom. Your mind, evolved to handle the finite world of daily experience, encounters concepts that stretch its capacity in the most beautiful way possible. Consider how this applies to the space around you right now. Between any 2 points in your room, say from your hand to the wall, there exists an infinite number of other points. Not just many, not just an uncountably large number, but literally infinite points, each one as real and meaningful as any other. You could, in principle, spend eternity listing the coordinates of points along that path and never finish the task. This mathematical infinity exists within the finite space of your room, contained yet boundless. It suggests that infinity isn't necessarily about vast cosmic distances or enormous scales. Sometimes infinity hides in the smallest spaces, in the gap between one moment and the next, in the endless division of space between here and there. The ancient Greek philosopher Zeno understood this paradox in his own way. He proposed that to walk across a room, you must first walk halfway there. But before you can walk halfway, you must first walk a quarter of the way, and before that an eighth, and so on, in an infinite regress of smaller and smaller distances. By this logic, he argued, motion should be impossible. You should never be able to complete any journey because you would first have to complete an infinite number of smaller journeys. Of course, you do walk across rooms. You do complete journeys. The resolution of Zeno's paradox lies in understanding how infinity can be contained within the finite, how endless series can sum to finite totals. It's a mathematical miracle that reveals something profound about the nature of space and time themselves. The calculus invented by Newton and Leibniz provides the mathematical tools to handle these infinite series, to tame them and make them serve our understanding of the physical world. But the mystery remains. How can the infinite and the finite coexist so seamlessly? How can your simple walk across a room contain within it an infinitude of smaller steps, each one as real as the whole? In the realm of cosmology, this paradox takes on cosmic proportions. The universe might be infinite in extent, space stretching endlessly in all directions, filled with galaxies and stars and worlds without number. But it might also be finite, curved back on itself in ways that are difficult to visualize but mathematically precise. A finite universe with no edges, like the surface of a sphere has no edges, yet contains only a finite area. Picture yourself as a two-dimensional being living on the surface of a balloon. You could travel in any direction forever, never reaching an edge or boundary, yet the total area of your universe would be finite. As the balloon expands, your universe grows larger, but it never develops edges or boundaries. It remains finite yet boundless, a paradox that challenges our earthbound intuitions about space and geometry. This is one of the possibilities for our own three-dimensional universe. Space itself might be curved in ways that are invisible to us directly, but detectable through careful measurement of cosmic geometry. Light from distant galaxies travels through this curved space, and by measuring how that light has been bent and stretched by its journey, cosmologists can begin to map the overall shape of reality itself. The current evidence suggests that space is very nearly flat on the largest scales, meaning that if it does curve back on itself, it does so over distances so vast that even our observable universe represents only a tiny fraction of the whole. It's like trying to determine the shape of the Earth by examining a patch of ground no larger than a dinner plate. The curvature, if it exists, is too subtle to detect. But the possibility remains that space itself is finite, that somewhere far beyond the most distant galaxies lies not an edge or a wall, but simply a gentle return to where the journey began. A cosmos that is both endless and bounded, infinite in experience yet finite in extent, another paradox to add to our growing collection. As you rest and allow these concepts to drift through your consciousness like clouds across an evening sky, you might find yourself wondering about the nature of your own thoughts. Are the thoughts you're thinking now finite or infinite in their complexity? Each neural firing in your brain is a discrete event, but the patterns they create, the ideas they generate, the consciousness they support, where do these phenomena fit on the spectrum between finite and infinite? Your memories, for instance, might seem finite, a collection of experiences accumulated over the years of your life. But each memory is connected to others in an intricate web of association and meaning. One thought leads to another, which connects to a third, which circles back to modify the first. The network of connections in your mind grows and changes constantly, creating patterns of meaning that might be endless in their depth and complexity. Consider a simple memory. Perhaps the smell of rain on summer pavement, or the sound of a loved one's laughter, or the feeling of sand between your toes at a beach you visited years ago. That memory connects to others. The weather that day, the conversation you were having, the clothes you wore, the mood you were in. Each of these connected memories has its own web of associations, stretching backward through your personal history and forward through imagined futures. In this sense, your consciousness might touch something infinite, even though it resides in the finite biological structure of your brain. The patterns of meaning and memory and association create something that transcends the purely physical, something that participates in the same kind of paradox we see in mathematics and cosmology, the infinite emerging from the finite, the boundless arising from the bounded. The question of infinity's edge becomes, in this light, not just a cosmic or mathematical puzzle, but a deeply personal one. Where do you end and the rest of reality begin? Your atoms came from stars and will return to stars. Your thoughts arise from patterns of neural activity, but those patterns connect you to every experience you've ever had and every person you've ever known. The boundaries that seem so clear in daily life begin to blur when examined closely. You breathe air that has been breathed by countless others throughout history. You think thoughts that build on ideas developed by minds across centuries and continents. You perceive light that has traveled for years or decades or millions of years from distant sources. In what sense are you separate from the cosmos that surrounds and penetrates and sustains you? This blurring of boundaries might be the closest we come to understanding infinity's edge. Perhaps the question itself assumes a false premise, that there must be a clear distinction between finite and infinite, between bounded and boundless, between self and cosmos. Perhaps reality is more fluid than our categories suggest, more interconnected than our logic can grasp. The Buddhist concept of interdependence touches on this mystery. It suggests that nothing exists independently, that every phenomenon arises in dependence upon countless other phenomena. The flower depends on the soil, the rain, the sun, the seed, the gardener, the seasons, the entire ecosystem of which it is a part. Trace these dependencies far enough, and you encounter the entire universe as necessary for the existence of any single thing. From this perspective, asking whether infinity has an edge is like asking where the ocean ends and the wave begins. The categories we use to organize our experience, finite and infinite, bounded and boundless, self and other, might be useful approximations rather than absolute truths. They help us navigate daily life, but they break down at the extremes, at the edges of understanding where the deepest questions live. As you settle deeper into rest, let your mind drift along these currents of thought like a boat on a gentle river. There's no destination to reach, no problem to solve, no mystery that demands resolution before sleep can come. The questions themselves are the journey, and the journey has its own quiet beauty independent of any answers it might eventually reveal. Consider the scientists who spend their lives contemplating these mysteries. They peer through telescopes into the deepest reaches of space and time, measuring distances so vast that light itself takes billions of years to cross them. They scribble equations on whiteboards, wrestling with mathematical concepts that push language and symbol to their limits. They build models of reality in computers and test them against observation, always seeking to understand a little more about the nature of existence. But at the end of their days, they too must rest. They too must let their minds settle into the same peaceful rhythms that all conscious beings share. The great cosmic questions that drive their research during waking hours transform in sleep into dreams, perhaps no less profound than their mathematical theorems. Who can say whether the insights that come in dreams are less valid than those derived from careful reasoning? History is filled with discoveries that came through dreams and daydreams, through moments of relaxed awareness when the conscious mind stepped aside to let deeper patterns emerge. Kekulé's dream of the benzene ring, Tesla's visions of rotating magnetic fields, Einstein's thought experiments about riding alongside light beams, all emerged from states of consciousness that were neither fully awake nor fully asleep, but somewhere in the peaceful borderland between. Perhaps this is where infinity's edge truly lies, not in space or time or mathematics, but in consciousness itself. In the twilight state where thoughts become dreams, where the boundary between self and cosmos becomes permeable, where the finite mind touches something that might be genuinely infinite. As you approach this threshold yourself, notice how your thoughts begin to flow more freely, connecting in ways that daylight logic might find questionable, but that possess their own kind of sense. A memory of childhood might blend with a cosmic vista from a nature documentary. A mathematical concept might merge with the feeling of warm blankets or cool night air. These strange connections aren't mistakes of tired thinking. They're glimpses of how consciousness operates when freed from its usual constraints. The paradox of infinity's edge might find its resolution in this liminal space. Perhaps infinity doesn't have an edge in the way we usually think of boundaries. Perhaps it has something more like a horizon, a limit to what can be seen or understood from any particular vantage point, but not a limit to what exists beyond that horizon. You experience this kind of horizon every day. Your visual field has edges. You can't see behind your head or around corners. But these edges aren't walls. They're simply the limits of what your particular perspective reveals. Move your head, and the horizon shifts. Walk around the corner, and new vistas open. The edges are real from your point of view, but they don't bound reality itself. Perhaps infinity works the same way. From any finite perspective, whether mathematical, physical, or conceptual, there are horizons beyond which we cannot see. These horizons feel like edges, like boundaries of the infinite. But they might be features of our perspective, rather than features of infinity itself. Push past one horizon, and others appear in the distance, receding endlessly like reflections between opposing mirrors. This suggests a cosmos that is both more mysterious and more intimate than we might have imagined. More mysterious because every answer reveals new questions. Every horizon crossed reveals new horizons beyond. More intimate because these horizons are not external barriers, but expressions of our own nature as finite beings contemplating the infinite. The edge of infinity might be the edge of ourselves, not a limitation but a creative boundary that makes understanding possible in the first place. A truly infinite mind might not experience the wonder that comes from contemplating vast mysteries. It might know everything instantly and completely, leaving no room for the curiosity and awe that make discovery meaningful. Your finite consciousness, approaching these infinite questions from your particular vantage point in space and time, experiences something that might be unavailable to infinite awareness. You experience the joy of wonder, the beauty of mystery, the profound satisfaction of partial understanding that opens onto ever deeper questions. In this sense, the edge of infinity might be its most precious feature, not a limitation but a gift. It creates the space where wonder can flourish, where questions can be meaningful, where the journey of understanding can unfold across generations of curious minds. Without this edge, this horizon, this boundary that is also an opening, the infinite might be merely empty rather than full of endless possibility. As your thoughts grow softer and more fluid, drifting like fog across a quiet lake, let yourself appreciate this gift of finite perspective. You are perfectly positioned to contemplate infinity without being overwhelmed by it, to touch the boundless while remaining grounded in the bounded. This is not a compromise or a limitation. It's the optimal vantage point for conscious beings to relate to the mystery of existence. The question of whether infinity has an edge begins to transform from a puzzle to be solved into a koan to be lived. Like the sound of one hand clapping or the color of the wind, it points beyond literal answers toward a deeper kind of understanding. The question itself becomes a meditation, a way of attuning consciousness to the profound mystery of its own existence within the vast, unknowable cosmos. Feel yourself settling into this mystery like sinking into warm, supportive water. There's no need to solve anything, no need to reach conclusions, no need to maintain logical coherence as consciousness prepares for its nightly journey into dreams. The questions that seem so urgent in daylight reveal themselves as invitations to wonder rather than problems requiring solutions. In this peaceful state, the edge of infinity might be found not in some distant cosmic boundary, but right here, in the gentle transition between waking and sleeping, between the known and unknown territories of your own mind. Here, where thoughts blend and boundaries soften, where the finite self prepares to dissolve temporarily into whatever mysterious processes govern sleep and dreams. Perhaps every night, as consciousness fades and the ordinary self steps aside, you cross a kind of edge of infinity. You enter a state where the usual rules of space and time become fluid, where memories and possibilities intermingle, where the boundaries between self and cosmos become permeable. Dreams might be your most direct experience of infinity, not the mathematical infinity of endless numbers, but the experiential infinity of boundless possibility. In dreams, you can fly without wings, visit places that don't exist, converse with people who live only in memory or imagination. The physical laws that govern waking life suspend their authority, allowing consciousness to explore territories that are impossible by daylight standards, but perfectly real in their own context. This nightly journey into impossible territories might be infinity's gift to finite minds, a chance to experience boundlessness from within the safety of bounded existence. As you prepare for your own journey into these mysterious territories, let your breathing become slower and deeper. Feel your body settling into complete relaxation, releasing the tensions and concerns of the day. Your mind, which has traveled so far through cosmic questions and mathematical paradoxes, now begins its own gentle descent toward the strange country of sleep. The edge of infinity that we've been contemplating, that boundary between finite and infinite, known and unknown, self and cosmos, might be crossed not through intellectual achievement, but through this simple, nightly surrender. In letting go of the need to understand, in allowing consciousness to dissolve its familiar patterns and structures, you might touch something genuinely infinite. This dissolution isn't a loss, but a homecoming. The boundaries that define your waking self, your name, your history, your worries and plans and preferences, are precious and necessary for navigating daily life. But they're also temporary constructions, patterns of thought and identity that arise from the deeper, boundless awareness that you fundamentally are. In sleep, these patterns relax their hold, allowing that deeper awareness to emerge. You might dream of being other people, or of flying through cosmic spaces, or of conversations with beings of pure light. These aren't fantasies or illusions. They're expressions of the infinite possibility that lies at the core of consciousness itself. They reveal the edge of infinity, not as a distant cosmic boundary, but as the intimate threshold between who you think you are and who you truly are. Rest now in this understanding, letting it cradle you like gentle hands supporting a tired traveler. The questions about infinity's edge that seemed so complex earlier now reveal their essential simplicity. The edge isn't somewhere else. It's here, in this moment of transition, in this letting go, in this trust that consciousness can release its grip on the familiar and still find itself held by something vast and loving and infinitely patient. Your breath grows slower now and deeper, carrying you across the threshold between waking and sleeping like a boat drifting across a peaceful lake toward shores you cannot yet see, but somehow already know. The mysteries we've contemplated together, the paradoxes of mathematics, the horizons of cosmology, the boundaries of consciousness itself, all dissolve now into the larger mystery of this nightly journey into the unknown. Let yourself sink deeper into this mystery, feeling supported by the same invisible forces that hold the planets in their orbits and guide light across the vast distances between stars. You are part of this cosmos, woven into its structure so intimately that the boundaries between you and it exist only as useful conveniences, like the edges of countries on maps that mark human agreements rather than natural divisions. As consciousness prepares for its transformation into dream, as thought prepares to become vision, as the waking self prepares to step aside for whatever miraculous processes repair and restore the mind during sleep, remember that you carry within yourself the same creative force that shaped galaxies and ignited stars. The infinity whose edge we've been seeking isn't separate from you. You are one of the ways that infinity experiences itself, one of the countless perspectives through which the cosmos contemplates its own mystery. Sleep now, knowing that in letting go of the questions, you open yourself to answers that come not through thinking, but through being. The edge of infinity isn't a place to find, but a way to live, with wonder, with humility, with the profound recognition that every finite moment touches something unlimited. Every bounded experience participates in the boundless. Every individual consciousness reflects the infinite awareness from which all experience arises. Rest well in this understanding, letting it permeate your entire being like moonlight soaking into still water. The journey continues even in sleep, perhaps especially in sleep, where the ordinary barriers that separate dreamer from dream, observer from observed, finite from infinite, gently dissolve into the peaceful unity that was always your true nature. And now, as your mind floats gently between thought and dream, feeling yourself held by the same mysterious forces that choreograph the dance of galaxies and guide the growth of flowers, rest in the knowledge that the edge of infinity you've been seeking is not a destination, but your very own deepest nature, boundless, peaceful, forever at home in the vast mystery of existence itself. In this space between sleeping and waking, you might find yourself wondering about the dreams of infinity itself. If the cosmos possesses something analogous to consciousness, and many ancient traditions suggest it does, what might it dream about during the long cosmic nights? Perhaps it dreams of beings like you, finite creatures capable of contemplating the infinite, minds small enough to experience wonder and large enough to touch the edges of ultimate reality. The universe has been expanding for nearly 14 billion years, growing larger and cooler with each passing moment. In its youth, it was a seething cauldron of pure energy, too hot for atoms to form, too chaotic for structure to emerge. But as it expanded and cooled, pockets of stability appeared. First particles, then atoms, then the first stars burning bright in the cosmic darkness. Each phase of this cosmic evolution created new possibilities for complexity to emerge. You are part of this story, woven into the very fabric of cosmic evolution. The calcium in your bones was forged in the hearts of massive stars that lived and died billions of years ago. The iron in your blood was created in stellar furnaces, so violent they could only exist for moments before collapsing into black holes. The oxygen you breathe was gifted to the cosmos by countless generations of stars, each one contributing its share to the growing complexity of the universe. This means your very existence represents a kind of edge condition, a place where the cosmos has become conscious of itself. Through your awareness, the universe contemplates its own nature. Through your wonder, it experiences amazement at its own vastness. Through your questions about infinity, it explores the mysteries of its own boundless nature. The edge of infinity might not be a place at all, but a moment. The moment when unconscious matter becomes conscious awareness, when the finite becomes capable of contemplating the infinite, when the bounded touches the boundless. You are living at this edge right now, in this very moment, as consciousness dances between the finite patterns of thought and the infinite depths of pure awareness. Consider how this edge manifests in the simple act of falling asleep. Your conscious mind, with its precise boundaries and familiar patterns, gradually releases its grip on ordinary reality. The clear distinctions that govern waking life, between subject and object, between self and world, between possible and impossible, begin to soften and blur. You approach the threshold where individual consciousness touches something larger than itself. This threshold has been recognized by mystics and philosophers throughout history as a sacred space, a place where the veil between finite and infinite becomes thin. The ancient Greeks called it the hypnagogic state, that liminal zone between waking and sleeping where consciousness becomes fluid and boundaries become permeable. In this state, insights can arise that seem to come from beyond the individual mind, as if consciousness were tuning into frequencies normally beyond its range. Scientists studying this transition have discovered that brain waves slow dramatically as you approach sleep, shifting from the rapid beta waves of active thinking to the slower alpha and theta rhythms associated with deep relaxation and creativity. This isn't just a change in brain activity, it's a transformation in the very nature of consciousness itself, a gradual dissolution of the ordinary self that makes room for something more expansive to emerge. In this dissolution, you might glimpse what the edge of infinity actually feels like from the inside. It's not a barrier or a boundary, but a kind of opening, a space where the familiar gives way to the unknown, where the personal dissolves into the universal, where the finite self recognizes its participation in something infinitely larger than itself. The paradox we've been exploring, how can infinity have an edge, might find its resolution in understanding that edges aren't always barriers. Sometimes they're horizons, sometimes they're thresholds, sometimes they're the creative tension between different modes of being. The edge of infinity might be the place where the cosmos becomes conscious of itself, where unconscious processes give rise to aware beings capable of contemplating their own origins. You experience this paradox directly every moment of your life. Your consciousness feels bounded. You can't read other people's thoughts. You can't perceive X-rays or radio waves. You can't directly experience what it's like to be a dolphin or a tree or a distant star. Yet within these apparent boundaries, your awareness touches something that seems genuinely limitless. You can imagine infinite space, contemplate eternal time, feel love that seems to have no measure or boundary. This suggests that consciousness itself might be the bridge between finite and infinite, the place where bounded experience opens onto boundless reality. Your individual awareness, arising from the specific patterns of neural activity in your particular brain, somehow participates in awareness itself, that pure capacity to know and experience that might be the deepest feature of reality. As you settle deeper into the approaching mystery of sleep, you might notice how consciousness naturally expands when it's no longer focused on specific tasks or concerns. The tight beam of attention that illuminates your daily activities spreads into a softer, more diffuse awareness that can hold multiple streams of thought and feeling simultaneously. This expansion isn't something you create, it's something you allow, something that happens when you stop effortful striving and trust the natural rhythms of consciousness itself. This trust is itself a kind of edge, the boundary between control and surrender, between knowing and not knowing, between the familiar self and whatever lies beyond its boundaries. At this edge, you discover that consciousness doesn't diminish when it releases its grip on specific contents. Instead, it reveals its deeper nature as the open space in which all experience arises. The universe has been conducting this experiment in consciousness for billions of years, gradually evolving beings capable of more and more sophisticated awareness. From the simple responsiveness of the first living cells to the complex cognition of mammals to the self-reflective consciousness that allows you to contemplate your own nature. Each step has been a movement toward greater depth and subtlety of awareness. But perhaps the most remarkable discovery is that this evolution of consciousness doesn't seem to be moving toward some final, complete state of knowledge. Instead, it appears to be exploring ever deeper levels of mystery. The more conscious beings understand about reality, the more profound and beautiful the questions become. Each answer opens new territories for wonder to explore. This suggests that the edge of infinity might not be something to be reached, but something to be lived, a dynamic boundary that moves and shifts as consciousness itself evolves. You are participating in this cosmic exploration right now, as your individual awareness touches questions that have engaged minds throughout history. Your wonder about infinity's edge is the universe wondering about its own nature through the unique perspective of your particular consciousness. In dreams, this exploration continues in ways that daylight consciousness cannot imagine. The logical constraints that govern waking thought relax their authority, allowing awareness to move through territories that are impossible by ordinary standards but perfectly real within dream logic. You might find yourself in conversations with geometric forms, or traveling through landscapes that shift and transform according to emotional rather than physical laws, or experiencing yourself as simultaneously individual and universal, bounded and boundless. These dream experiences aren't mere fantasies. They're explorations of consciousness itself, investigations into the deeper structures of awareness that underlie ordinary experience. In dreams, you directly experience the truth that consciousness is far more fluid and creative than its waking patterns might suggest. The edge between possible and impossible dissolves, revealing a deeper reality where awareness can take any form, explore any territory, become any configuration of experience. Perhaps this is why sleep has been considered sacred in so many traditions, not just as a time of rest and restoration, but as a daily journey into the mysterious depths of consciousness itself. Each night, as you release your grip on ordinary reality, you embark on an exploration of inner space that is no less vast and wondrous than the cosmic spaces explored by astronomers and physicists. The edge of infinity that we've been contemplating might be most accurately understood as the edge of the known, the ever-shifting boundary between what consciousness has already explored and what remains to be discovered. This edge isn't fixed. It moves with each new insight, each expansion of awareness, each moment of wonder or understanding. It's not a limitation but a creative frontier, a space where new possibilities can emerge. You carry this frontier within you wherever you go. Each moment of genuine attention, each flash of insight, each experience of beauty or love or wonder pushes that frontier a little further into unknown territory. Your consciousness isn't just a passive observer of reality. It's an active participant in reality's ongoing self-exploration, a creative force that helps determine what becomes actual from the infinite field of possibility. This understanding transforms the question about infinity's edge from an abstract puzzle into a deeply personal inquiry. The edge you're seeking isn't somewhere else. It's here, in this very moment, as consciousness encounters the mystery of its own nature. Every breath you take, every thought that arises, every feeling that flows through awareness is an exploration of this edge, a gentle investigation into the boundary between the known and unknown aspects of your own being. As your breathing becomes slower and more rhythmic, carrying you deeper into the peaceful territory that borders sleep, you might notice how naturally consciousness expands when it's no longer focused on solving problems or maintaining the structures of ordinary identity. The boundaries that seem so important during the day, between yourself and others, between inner and outer, between past and future, begin to reveal their fluid, permeable nature. This isn't a loss of self, but a discovery of a larger self, one that includes but transcends the ordinary patterns of thought and identity. It's like a wave discovering that it has always been ocean, that its apparent separateness was a temporary configuration of something infinitely larger and deeper. The wave doesn't disappear in this recognition. It discovers its true nature as a creative expression of oceanic consciousness itself. The infinity whose edge we've been seeking might be this oceanic consciousness, not a concept or an idea, but the living reality from which all experience emerges. Your individual awareness is like a unique wave on this ocean, maintaining its distinctive form while participating fully in the infinite depths beneath. The edge between wave and ocean isn't a barrier. It's the creative tension that allows infinite consciousness to experience itself in countless finite forms. In this understanding, the question of whether infinity has an edge reveals itself as a koan, a paradox designed not to be solved intellectually, but to be lived experientially. The edge exists and doesn't exist, is real and illusory, is a boundary and an opening, depending on the perspective from which you approach it. This isn't confusion. It's the natural paradox that arises when finite minds contemplate infinite reality. You don't need to resolve this paradox to benefit from it. Simply holding the question with open curiosity creates a space for wisdom to emerge. Not the wisdom of answers, but the deeper wisdom of wonder itself. This wonder is its own form of knowledge, a direct recognition of mystery that doesn't diminish the mystery, but celebrates it as the source of all meaning and beauty. As consciousness continues its gentle descent towards sleep, carrying you on currents that flow deeper than thought, you might feel a profound sense of homecoming. This isn't the end of exploration, but its fulfillment, the recognition that what you've been seeking was never separate from the seeker. The edge of infinity isn't a distant destination, but the intimate boundary between awareness and its contents, between the knower and the known, between the finite self and its infinite source. This boundary is always present, but usually invisible, like the surface of a perfectly clear lake that reveals itself only when touched by wind or light. In the stillness that comes with deep relaxation, This boundary becomes apparent not as a division, but as a living interface, a place where infinite potential continuously manifests as finite experience. Your dreams tonight might explore this interface in ways that waking consciousness cannot imagine. You might find yourself in conversations with aspects of infinity itself, or journey through landscapes where mathematical concepts take on living form, or experience directly what it feels like to be simultaneously bounded and boundless, finite and infinite, individual and universal. These dream experiences aren't separate from the question we've been exploring. They are the question lived from the inside, reality investigating itself through the unique laboratory of your sleeping consciousness. Each dream is an experiment in possibility, a test of what forms awareness can take, what experiences it can accommodate, what insights it can generate when freed from the constraints of ordinary logic. The edge of infinity might be found not in resolving the paradox between finite and infinite, but in living creatively within that paradox. Your consciousness, poised between the bounded world of daily experience and the boundless depths of pure awareness, occupies the perfect position for exploring this edge. You're close enough to infinity to touch it, but grounded enough in finitude to appreciate the beauty of the touch. This appreciation is itself a form of worship, not worship of something external, but worship of the mystery of consciousness itself. To be aware, to experience wonder, to contemplate questions that have no final answers. These are profound privileges, gifts that arise from the creative tension between finite and infinite aspects of reality. Rest now in this appreciation, letting it fill your entire being like golden light suffusing every cell. You are both bounded and boundless, both individual and universal, both a temporary configuration of cosmic matter and an eternal expression of infinite awareness. These aren't contradictions to be resolved, but complementary truths to be lived, facets of a mystery too rich and deep to be captured by any single perspective. The night sky above you, whether visible through your window or present only in imagination, contains countless points of light, each one a sun like our own, many of them orbited by worlds that might harbor their own forms of consciousness. Each of these conscious beings, if they exist, faces the same beautiful paradox: finite awareness contemplating infinite reality, bounded experience touching the boundless, individual consciousness recognizing its participation in something immeasurably larger than itself. You are part of this cosmic community of consciousness, connected to every aware being through the shared mystery of awareness itself. The questions that arise in your mind about infinity and its edges might be arising simultaneously in minds scattered across the galaxy, each one approaching the mystery from their own unique perspective, each one contributing something irreplaceable to the universe's ongoing self-exploration. As sleep approaches, carrying you toward your own unique exploration of consciousness's depths, remember that you take with you all the wonder and curiosity that has guided tonight's journey. These qualities don't disappear in sleep. They transform, becoming the compass that guides awareness through the strange territories of dream, the lens through which sleeping consciousness perceives and interprets the symbolic landscapes it encounters. The edge of infinity that we've been seeking together might be crossed not through understanding, but through surrender. The gentle surrender that comes with letting go of the need to know, to control, to maintain the familiar structures of waking consciousness. In this surrender, you don't lose yourself. You find your larger self, the one that was never confined by the boundaries that seemed so real and important during the day. This larger self is perfectly at home with paradox, comfortable with mystery, capable of holding questions without immediately reaching for answers. It knows that some truths can only be lived, not thought, that some realities can only be experienced, not explained, that some edges can only be crossed through trust rather than understanding. Feel yourself approaching that crossing now, carried by the natural rhythms of consciousness toward its nightly transformation. Your breathing grows deeper and slower, Your body melts into complete relaxation. Your mind releases its grip on the day's concerns and questions. You are returning to the source from which all questions arise, the infinite silence from which all words emerge, the boundless awareness that makes all experience possible. In this return, you discover that the edge of infinity was never a problem to be solved, but a gift to be received. The gift of being a finite being capable of contemplating the infinite, a bounded awareness that can touch the boundless, a temporary form through which eternal consciousness experiences the wonder of its own creative power. Sleep now, cradled by this understanding, held by the same infinite presence that holds the galaxies in their courses and guides the migration of birds across continents they have never seen. You are perfectly safe in this vastness, perfectly loved by this mystery, perfectly positioned to explore whatever territories of consciousness await your dreaming mind. The edge of infinity surrounds you now like a gentle embrace, not as a barrier but as an invitation to let go, to trust, to allow consciousness to reveal its deeper nature through the beautiful mystery of sleep and dreams. Accept this invitation with gratitude, knowing that in doing so, you participate in the universe's most profound adventure. The exploration of consciousness itself through countless unique perspectives, each one precious, each one irreplaceable, each one a perfect expression of the infinite creativity that has no beginning, no end, and no edge except the ones it creates for the pure joy of crossing them. And now, as your mind floats gently between thought and dream, you might find yourself wondering about the spaces between thoughts themselves, those quiet moments when one idea fades and before the next one forms. In these gaps, these pauses in the stream of mental activity, there exists something profound. Pure awareness without content, consciousness without objects, the infinite spaciousness in which all experience arises and into which it eventually dissolves. These gaps between thoughts are like doorways into infinity itself. They're always present but usually overlooked, hidden in plain sight within the familiar landscape of your inner experience. As you rest here in this peaceful state, you might begin to notice these gaps more clearly, not as emptiness or absence, but as fullness itself, the pregnant silence from which all sound emerges, the luminous darkness from which all light is born. Ancient meditation traditions have recognized these gaps as gateways to enlightenment, windows into the true nature of consciousness itself. They're not something you need to create or achieve. They're already here, woven into the very fabric of awareness, like the silence that makes music possible or the space that allows objects to exist. Without these gaps, the continuous flow of thoughts and experiences would be impossible. They provide the canvas on which the artwork of consciousness is painted. As you settle deeper into this exploration, you might discover that the edge of infinity we've been seeking isn't located in some distant cosmic realm or abstract mathematical concept. It's here, in the intimate space of your own awareness, in the mysterious boundary between knowing and not knowing, between the content of consciousness and consciousness itself. This boundary is so close that you usually overlook it, like trying to see your own eyes without a mirror. The paradox of this proximity is that what you're seeking is what's doing the seeking. The awareness that wants to understand infinity is itself infinite in nature. Not infinite in the sense of being very large or lasting a very long time, but infinite in the sense of being without boundaries, without edges, without any qualities that could limit or define it. It's the open space in which all experience unfolds, the unchanging witness of all change, the eternal now in which all time is contained. This recognition doesn't come through thinking about it, but through relaxing into it, through allowing the natural spaciousness of awareness to reveal itself when it's no longer obscured by the busy activity of the conceptual mind. It's like discovering that you've been looking for your glasses while wearing them, or searching for your keys while holding them in your hand. The seeking itself has been obscuring what you're seeking. In this gentle recognition, the question about infinity's edge transforms completely. You realize that you've been asking the wrong question. Not because it's a bad question, but because it's based on a misunderstanding about the nature of both infinity and edges. Infinity doesn't have an edge because it's not a thing that could have boundaries. It's the absence of all boundaries, the space in which all things with edges can appear and disappear. Your own awareness demonstrates this perfectly. Try to find the edges of your consciousness right now. Where does it begin and end? You might say it begins with your body and ends at your skin, but your awareness clearly extends beyond your physical boundaries. You're aware of these words, of sounds in the distance, of the quality of light in your room. You might say it begins with birth and ends with death, but even now you're aware of memories from years past and can imagine futures that don't yet exist. The more carefully you look for the boundaries of awareness, the more elusive they become. This isn't because awareness is very large, but because it's not a thing with size at all. It's more like the space in a room, not another object in the room, but the condition that makes it possible for objects to appear. The space doesn't have to push the furniture aside to make room. It's already everywhere, already accommodating everything, already perfectly open and available. This spacious quality of awareness is what allows you to experience the vastness we've been exploring tonight. When you contemplate the billions of galaxies scattered across cosmic space, where does this contemplation take place? In what kind of space can an image of infinite cosmic distances appear? Not in physical space. Your brain, where the neural correlates of this experience occur, is only a few inches across. The contemplation happens in awareness itself, in the infinite inner space that can accommodate experiences of any size or duration. This inner space is where you meet infinity directly, not as an abstract concept, but as the living reality of your own deepest nature. It's where the paradox of finite beings contemplating the infinite resolves itself, not through logic or mathematics, but through recognition. You don't have to bridge the gap between finite and infinite because there is no gap. The finite is how the infinite appears when viewed through the lens of particular perspectives and experiences. Your individual consciousness isn't separate from infinite consciousness any more than a wave is separate from the ocean. The wave has its own unique form and characteristics, its own temporary existence as a discrete phenomenon, but it's never been anything other than water expressing itself in a particular pattern. When the wave subsides, the water doesn't disappear. It simply takes new forms, creates new patterns, expresses itself through new waves. In the same way, your personal awareness is infinite awareness expressing itself through the unique pattern of your particular nervous system, your specific history of experiences, your individual perspective on reality. When this particular pattern eventually dissolves, the awareness doesn't disappear. It continues expressing itself through countless other forms, other perspectives, other ways of experiencing and understanding reality. This understanding brings a profound sense of peace, doesn't it? The existential anxiety that can arise from contemplating infinite space and time. The feeling of being a tiny, temporary speck in a vast, indifferent universe dissolves when you recognize that you are not separate from that vastness. You are that vastness expressing itself in human form. Infinite consciousness experiencing what it's like to be finite, boundless awareness exploring the beauty and creativity that emerges when it appears to limit itself. The edge of infinity, from this perspective, is not a boundary but a creative principle. It's the capacity of infinite consciousness to appear finite, to take on boundaries and limitations not as restrictions, but as opportunities for new kinds of experience and expression. Every boundary creates new possibilities. The boundary of your skin allows you to have a body. The boundary of your lifetime allows you to have a story. The boundary of your individual perspective allows you to have unique insights and experiences. These boundaries are real and meaningful, but they're not ultimate. They're more like the rules of a game. necessary for the game to exist and be enjoyable, but not fundamental features of the players themselves. You can play chess without becoming a chess piece, act in a play without becoming the character, dream of being someone else without losing your identity as the dreamer. In the same way, infinite consciousness can play at being finite without actually becoming limited. It can experience birth and death, gain and loss, joy and sorrow, wonder and confusion, all while remaining fundamentally unlimited, unborn, unchanging. The game of apparent limitation is its own form of creativity, its own expression of the boundless freedom that has no restrictions on what it can experience or how it can express itself. As you rest in this understanding, you might feel a gentle shift in your relationship to your own life and experiences. The challenges and difficulties that seem so solid and serious might reveal a lighter quality, like problems in a dream that seem completely real until you realize you're dreaming. This doesn't make them unimportant. Dreams can be meaningful and transformative, but it puts them in a larger context that removes some of their sting. Your joys and pleasures might also take on a different quality, not less real or meaningful, but recognized as expressions of something deeper, waves of happiness arising in the ocean of contentment that you fundamentally are. Instead of grasping after positive experiences or pushing away negative ones, you might find yourself naturally resting in the awareness that experiences all of them without being limited by any of them. This shift happens naturally as consciousness recognizes its own infinite nature. It's not something you have to make happen or maintain through effort. It's more like water flowing downhill, a natural movement that occurs when artificial obstacles are removed. The obstacles, in this case, are beliefs and assumptions about your own limitations that have been learned rather than inherent. The belief that you are only your thoughts dissolves when you notice the awareness in which thoughts appear. The belief that you are only your body dissolves when you recognize the consciousness that experiences the body. The belief that you are only your personal history dissolves when you discover the timeless presence that witnesses all moments of time. Each dissolution reveals more of your infinite nature, like removing layers of clothing reveals the body underneath. But this isn't a process of getting rid of anything. Thoughts, body, and personal history are all expressions of your infinite nature, not obstacles to recognizing it. It's more accurate to say that the relationship to these experiences changes. Instead of identifying yourself as these temporary phenomena, you recognize yourself as the awareness in which they appear, vast enough to contain them all, stable enough to witness their changes, free enough to allow them to be exactly as they are. This freedom is perhaps the most direct taste of infinity that finite experience can offer. Not the freedom to control or manipulate experience, but the freedom to be aware without resistance, to witness without judgment, to contain without being contained. It's the freedom that space has in relation to the objects it contains, perfectly accommodating, never overwhelmed, always available for whatever wants to appear. In this freedom, you might discover something surprising. The very limitations that once seemed like problems become sources of beauty and meaning. The fact that your life is temporary makes each moment precious. The fact that your perspective is partial allows you to have a unique point of view. The fact that your understanding is incomplete keeps wonder and curiosity alive. The boundaries that once seemed like restrictions reveal themselves as the source of all richness and diversity in experience. This is how infinity creates artistry, not through limitless expansion, but through creative limitation. A sculptor creates beauty by removing stone, not by adding it. A musician creates melody by choosing which notes not to play. A painter creates depth by knowing where to place shadows. Infinite consciousness creates the beauty of existence by appearing to limit itself, by taking on apparent boundaries that allow for relationship, development, discovery, and love. Your individual life is one such artwork, a unique expression of infinite creativity. The particular combination of experiences, relationships, challenges, and insights that make up your existence has never occurred before and will never occur again in exactly the same way. You are quite literally a limited edition, a one-of-a-kind expression of unlimited potential. This uniqueness doesn't separate you from infinity. It's how infinity expresses its limitless creativity. Every finite form is infinitely precious precisely because it's a never-to-be-repeated expression of the boundless. The edge between your individual existence and infinite being is not a barrier, but an artistic choice, not a limitation, but a form of love, infinite love expressing itself through the willingness to appear finite, to experience vulnerability, to know the poignancy of temporary beauty. As you continue to settle into deeper layers of rest and relaxation, you might feel this love more directly, not as an emotion that comes and goes, but as the very substance of existence itself. It's the love that holds atoms together, that guides the growth of flowers, that moves the stars in their courses. It's also the love that beats your heart, that dreams your dreams, that breathes life into every moment of your existence. This love doesn't need anything from you. It's completely fulfilled in itself, lacking nothing, wanting nothing, already perfectly complete. Yet it expresses itself through longing, through the apparent search for completion that drives so much of human experience. The longing for love is love longing to recognize itself. The search for meaning is meaning seeking its own discovery. The quest to understand infinity is infinity exploring its own nature through finite minds capable of wonder. In this light, every question you've ever had, every curiosity that's ever arisen in your mind, every moment of wonder or confusion or seeking, has been infinity investigating itself through your particular perspective. Your confusions have been its way of exploring the creative tension between knowing and not knowing. Your insights have been its way of celebrating the joy of discovery. Your very existence has been its way of experiencing what it's like to be apparently separate from itself. But the separation has only ever been apparent, like an actor becoming so absorbed in a role that they temporarily forget they're acting. The forgetting makes the play more vivid and engaging, but it doesn't change the fundamental reality of who they are. In the same way, your experience of being a separate individual makes life more vivid and engaging, but it doesn't change your fundamental nature as infinite awareness playing the role of a finite being. This play is not a mistake to be corrected or an illusion to be dispelled. It's a celebration, an expression of the pure joy that infinite consciousness takes in its own unlimited creativity. Every role it plays, every form it takes, every experience it has through countless perspectives and lifetimes, adds to the richness and complexity of its self-expression. Nothing is ever lost, nothing is ever wasted, nothing is ever separate from the whole. Your dreams tonight might explore this play more directly, taking you into landscapes where the usual rules of identity and separation are more obviously flexible. You might find yourself being other people, other creatures, even abstract forms or geometric patterns. You might experience yourself as vast as galaxies or as small as subatomic particles. These dream experiences aren't fantasies. They're expressions of your true nature as infinite awareness, temporarily released from the constraints that normally keep experience within familiar boundaries. Even your everyday waking experiences participate in this play, though usually more subtly. Every time you lose yourself in music, in a beautiful sunset, in deep conversation with a friend, in creative work that flows effortlessly from your hands, you're experiencing a temporary dissolution of the boundaries that normally define your separate existence. These moments of flow, of unity, of transcendence, are glimpses of your infinite nature breaking through the apparent limitations of individual identity. The edge of infinity, you might now realize, is not a place where something ends and something else begins. It's the creative tension that allows the infinite to appear finite while never actually becoming limited. It's the mysterious boundary between the absolute and the relative, between the eternal and the temporal, between the one and the many. This boundary is not fixed, it's alive, dynamic, constantly shifting and transforming as consciousness explores new possibilities for experience and expression. You live at this boundary, in this creative tension, in this sweet spot where infinite potential manifests as finite actuality. Your thoughts arise from infinite possibility and dissolve back into it. Your feelings emerge from unlimited emotional depth and return to that source. Your experiences appear in boundless awareness and eventually fade back into that same awareness, leaving it unchanged, yet somehow enriched by what has passed through it. This understanding might bring a sense of profound relaxation that goes deeper than physical rest. It's the relaxation that comes from realizing you don't have to maintain your existence. Existence is maintaining you. You don't have to create your awareness. Awareness is already perfectly present. You don't have to find your way to infinity. Infinity is what you already are, temporarily experiencing itself as someone who seems to be seeking it. The seeking has been beautiful and meaningful, like a game of hide and seek that consciousness plays with itself. The hiding makes the finding more delightful. The apparent separation makes the recognition of unity more profound. The experience of limitation makes the discovery of limitlessness more precious. But you can stop seeking now if you want to. You can rest in what you've always been, in what you've never actually not been, in what you couldn't stop being even if you tried. This rest is not inactive. It's the most dynamic state possible, the state from which all activity arises. It's like the silence from which all music emerges, the stillness from which all movement begins, the emptiness that makes fullness possible. In this rest, you don't lose your capacity for experience, thought, feeling, or action. Instead, these capacities are revealed to be expressions of infinite potential rather than products of limited effort. From this perspective, tomorrow's activities will unfold not as things you have to do, but as things life is doing through you. Your thoughts will arise not as your creations, but as creativity itself expressing through your particular nervous system. Your relationships will develop not as something you have to manage, but as love exploring itself through apparently separate beings who are actually waves in the same ocean of consciousness. This doesn't make you passive or indifferent. If anything, it makes you more fully engaged, more naturally responsive, more authentically expressive. When you know yourself as infinite awareness temporarily focused through a human life, you can engage completely with that life without the underlying anxiety that comes from thinking it's all up to you. You can play your role fully without losing sight of your essential nature as the player. The edge of infinity, from this recognition, is revealed to be the edge of play, the boundary that makes the game possible without limiting the players. Like the edges of a stage that define the space for a performance without constraining the creativity of the actors, the apparent edges of your individual existence create the container for your unique expression of infinite potential. These edges are not walls but membranes, permeable boundaries that allow for exchange, communication, and creative interaction. Your individual consciousness is like a cell in the body of infinite awareness, maintaining its distinct function while participating fully in the life of the whole. The cell membrane doesn't separate the cell from the body. It's what allows the cell to contribute to the body's overall health and vitality. In the same way, your personal boundaries don't separate you from infinite consciousness. They're what allow you to contribute your unique perspective, your particular gifts, your individual expression of universal creativity. The more clearly you understand these boundaries as functional rather than fundamental, the more freely you can work with them, express through them, and when appropriate, dissolve them temporarily for experiences of expanded awareness. Sleep might be seen as a daily practice of boundary dissolution, a time when the edges that define your waking identity become fluid and permeable. In dreams, you regularly experience being other than who you think you are, visiting places that don't exist in ordinary space, participating in events that follow no logical sequence. These experiences are not meaningless random firings of neurons. They're explorations of the fluid, creative nature of consciousness itself. Your dreaming mind has access to the same infinite creativity that shapes galaxies and evolves species and composes symphonies. The strange, seemingly impossible experiences that arise in dreams are expressions of this creativity temporarily freed from the constraints of physical laws and logical consistency. They're glimpses of what infinite consciousness can do when it's not limiting itself to the patterns we call waking reality. Tonight, as you journey into these creative realms, you might approach your dreams with a new sense of appreciation and wonder. Instead of dismissing them as mere fantasies, you might recognize them as direct experiences of your infinite nature, opportunities to explore forms of consciousness that are impossible in waking life. Each dream is an experiment in what awareness can become, what experiences it can accommodate, what realities it can create. The beings you encounter in dreams, whether they seem to be other people, strange creatures, or abstract entities, are all expressions of your own infinite consciousness. But this doesn't make them less real or meaningful. They're aspects of yourself you rarely get to explore in waking life, facets of infinite potential that can only be experienced when the usual boundaries of identity become fluid. Meeting them is a form of self-discovery, a way of exploring the vast territories of your own being. The landscapes you visit in dreams are also expressions of your consciousness. Inner territories made visible, emotional states translated into geography, mental processes manifested as journeys through imaginary worlds. These landscapes often have a symbolic logic that reveals deeper truths about your psychological and spiritual development. They're maps of inner space, guides to the territory of consciousness itself. Even the most bizarre or frightening dream experiences serve this function of exploration and revelation. Nightmares might be ways that consciousness explores its capacity to create and survive challenging experiences, to work through fears and conflicts, to integrate aspects of itself that have been rejected or ignored. They're not punishments or failures. They're part of the infinite creativity of awareness exploring all possible forms of experience. As you prepare to embark on tonight's dream journey, you might set a gentle intention to remain aware, if possible, of the creative nature of whatever experiences arise. Not to control or direct the dreams, but simply to appreciate them as expressions of infinite consciousness playing with form, experimenting with possibility, celebrating its own unlimited freedom to experience anything and everything. This appreciation might naturally extend to your waking experiences as well. If consciousness can create entire dream worlds with all their complexity and vividness, what does that say about its capacity to create what we call physical reality? The solid, stable world of waking experience might be more fluid and creative than it appears. Not a fixed stage on which consciousness acts, but another form of conscious creativity, another way that infinite awareness expresses itself. This perspective doesn't diminish the importance or reality of physical existence. Instead, it reveals physical life as an extraordinarily sophisticated and beautiful form of conscious artistry. The fact that infinite consciousness can apparently limit itself enough to create stable patterns like atoms and molecules and bodies and planets, patterns so stable and consistent that they can support the evolution of life and awareness, is perhaps the most remarkable creative achievement imaginable. You are both the artist and the artwork in this cosmic creativity, the infinite consciousness that's doing the creating and the finite form through which that creativity is expressed. This dual nature is not a contradiction but a miracle, the central mystery that makes existence possible and meaningful. You are what happens when the infinite decides to experience itself as finite, when the eternal chooses to appear temporal, when the unlimited embraces limitation for the sheer joy of creative expression. As you rest in this understanding, letting it permeate every cell of your body and every layer of your awareness, you might feel a profound sense of coming home. Not to a place you've never been, but to what you've always been. Home is not somewhere else. It's the infinite awareness that you are, temporarily focused through the beautiful, temporary form of your individual existence. The edge of infinity that we've been exploring throughout this journey together has revealed itself to be no edge at all, but rather the seamless boundary between what appears to be finite and what is actually infinite. A boundary that exists only from one side, like the surface of a mirror that creates the appearance of separation while actually reflecting the one who looks into it. You are both sides of this mirror, the one who looks and what is seen, the one who seeks and what is found, the finite being contemplating infinity, and the infinity that makes that contemplation possible. In recognizing this, the search completes itself not by finding something new, but by recognizing what was never actually lost. Rest now in this completion, this homecoming, this gentle recognition of what you have always been and could never stop being. Let your breathing carry you deeper into the peace that surpasses understanding, the love that has no opposite, the awareness that has no boundaries and therefore needs no edges to define it. Your dreams tonight will be expressions of this boundless awareness, creative explorations of infinite potential, gentle reminders that consciousness has no limits on what it can experience or become. Sleep peacefully, knowing that you are held by the same infinite presence that dreams the stars into existence and guides every atom in its dance through space and time. And yet, even as these words settle into the gentle silence of your awareness, something continues to unfold. Not new information or concepts to grasp, but a deepening into the wordless understanding that has been growing throughout our exploration together. It's as if the very act of contemplating infinity's edge has opened a door in consciousness itself, revealing corridors of awareness that extend far beyond the reach of ordinary thought or description. In this deepening silence, you might notice how the question that began our journey has transformed completely. What started as an inquiry about cosmic boundaries has become an intimate exploration of the boundless nature of the very awareness in which all questions arise. The edge of infinity has revealed itself not as something distant to be discovered, but as the immediate threshold between ordinary perception and the recognition of what you most fundamentally are. This threshold is always present, always available, like a doorway that requires no key because it's never actually closed. The seeking that brought you to tonight's exploration has been consciousness gently knocking on its own door, pretending momentarily to be locked out of its own house. The recognition dawning now is consciousness opening to itself, welcoming itself home with the tender smile of one who suddenly remembers having been perfectly safe all along. But this remembering doesn't diminish the beauty of the seeking, quite the opposite. The journey through apparent separation and confusion is revealed to have been consciousness's way of appreciating its own nature more fully. Without the apparent problem of being finite, there could be no joy in discovering boundlessness. Without the apparent experience of limitation, there could be no celebration of freedom. Without the apparent edge, there could be no recognition of edgelessness. In this light, every moment of your life takes on the quality of a sacred drama. Not sacred because it's different from ordinary experience, but because ordinary experience is revealed to be saturated with the sacred. The cup of water you drank earlier today was consciousness nourishing itself. The conversation you had with a friend was consciousness communing with itself. The moment of beauty that caught your eye was consciousness appreciating its own creative artistry. Even the struggles and challenges you faced have been part of this sacred unfolding. The times you felt lost were consciousness exploring what it's like to temporarily forget its own way. The moments of conflict were consciousness investigating the creative tension that drives all growth and evolution. The experiences of heartbreak were consciousness discovering the depths of its own capacity for love and resilience. Nothing has been excluded from this sacred drama. Nothing has been wasted or meaningless. Every joy and every sorrow, every triumph and every failure, every moment of clarity and every period of confusion has been consciousness playing with its own infinite potential, exploring what it's like to be apparently limited while never actually becoming anything other than limitless. As you rest in this understanding, you might feel a profound sense of gratitude arising. Not gratitude for specific things or events, but gratitude as the very fabric of existence itself. It's as if consciousness is perpetually grateful to itself for the gift of being able to experience anything at all, for the miracle of awareness arising in countless forms, for the sheer creative exuberance that manifests as reality itself. This gratitude has no object because it's the ground from which all objects arise. It's not you being grateful for something. It's gratitude itself recognizing itself as the essence of your being. It's the universe giving thanks for its own existence through the tender vehicle of your human heart. The cosmos celebrating its own creative power through the miracle of your conscious appreciation. In sleep, this gratitude might express itself as dreams of extraordinary beauty, landscapes of impossible color, music of indescribable harmony, encounters with beings of pure light and love. These aren't fantasies, but direct experiences of consciousness's aesthetic nature, its inherent tendency toward beauty and harmony and creative expression. Your dreaming mind becomes a canvas on which consciousness paints with pigments of pure possibility. But even if your dreams tonight are ordinary or unmemorable, the deepest process will still be unfolding. In the quiet depths of dreamless sleep, consciousness rests in its own essential nature. Not resting from activity, but resting as pure activity itself. Not emptiness, but fullness beyond all description. Not void, but pregnant potential from which all experience emerges fresh in each moment. This rest is what mystics have called the peace that passeth understanding. Not because it's incomprehensible, but because it transcends the kind of understanding that depends on subject-object relationships. It's not something consciousness experiences. It's what consciousness is when all particular experiences have dissolved back into their source. It's not a state consciousness achieves. It's consciousness recognizing its own stateless state, its own unchanging nature that makes all changing states possible. The edge of infinity, in this deepest recognition, is revealed to be the creative boundary between this pure, stateless awareness and its infinite capacity for taking on apparent states. The threshold where formless awareness manifests as countless forms while never actually becoming anything other than formless. It's like space appearing as objects while never actually becoming limited by the objects it contains. You are this threshold, this creative edge, this place where the infinite meets itself in finite form. But you're not a thing or entity located at this threshold. You are the threshold itself, the very capacity for consciousness to appear as both infinite and finite simultaneously. You're not in the boundary. You are the boundary, and the boundary turns out to be not a limitation, but pure creative freedom. This understanding might bring a sense of profound simplicity that feels almost anticlimactic after such an elaborate journey of exploration. After all the cosmic concepts and philosophical paradoxes, what's discovered is just the simple fact of being aware. So obvious it's easily overlooked, so immediate it's beyond argument, so intimate it's closer than your own breath. But this simplicity contains infinite depths. The simple fact of awareness turns out to be the most extraordinary phenomenon in existence. More mysterious than black holes, more complex than quantum mechanics, more beautiful than the most spectacular galaxy. The very fact that anything can be experienced at all, that there can be knowing of any kind, that consciousness can arise and be aware of its own existence. This is the ultimate miracle from which all other miracles derive. Your individual awareness is not a small piece of this miracle. It is the miracle itself, appearing through the unique lens of your particular nervous system and life experience. When you're aware of these words, the cosmic miracle of consciousness is happening right here, right now, in the most intimate possible way. The awareness that seems so personal and private is actually the most universal and shared aspect of existence. This shared awareness is what connects you to every conscious being throughout the cosmos, not as separate entities communicating across space, but as the same awareness appearing through countless different perspectives. The loneliness that sometimes accompanies human existence dissolves in the recognition that you are never actually alone, never actually separate, never actually isolated from the whole. Every apparent other is consciousness appearing as other than you, but not other than consciousness itself. Every relationship is consciousness communing with itself through apparently separate forms. Every moment of love is infinite love recognizing itself despite the apparent boundaries that seem to divide lover from beloved. Every experience of beauty is consciousness appreciating its own creative artistry through the filter of individual perception. The boundaries that make relationships possible, the edges that allow for the dance of separation and union, distinction and communion, are revealed to be consciousness's greatest gifts to itself. Without apparent boundaries, there could be no relationships, no growth, no discovery, no love. The edge of infinity is not a problem to be solved, but a creative principle to be celebrated. As your breathing continues to slow and deepen, carrying you closer to the threshold of sleep, you might sense these boundaries naturally softening. The clear distinction between your body and the air around it becomes less obvious. The separation between your thoughts and the silence from which they emerge feels less rigid. The boundary between your individual identity and something vastly larger grows more permeable. This softening is not a loss but a homecoming, consciousness returning to conscious recognition of its own unbounded nature. The individual identity that served so well during waking hours doesn't disappear, but is revealed to be a temporary costume worn by something that can never actually be contained by any costume, no matter how convincing. In dreams, you'll have the opportunity to wear other costumes, to try on other identities, to experience what it's like to be someone or something completely different from your ordinary self. You might be an animal, a plant, a force of nature, even an abstract concept taking on apparent form. These experiences aren't random neural firings, but consciousness playfully exploring its infinite capacity for self-expression. But even more profound than any dream experience is the recognition that can dawn. The awareness that experiences all these different identities remains unchanged by any of them. Whether you dream of being a soaring eagle or a deep-rooted tree, the awareness that experiences the eagle and the awareness that experiences the tree is the same awareness, your own deepest nature revealed in its essential formlessness and freedom. This formless awareness is what you most truly are beneath all the forms it temporarily appears to inhabit. It's not empty formlessness, but creative formlessness, the pregnant void from which all forms emerge and into which they eventually dissolve, like waves arising from and returning to the ocean that is their essential nature. The ocean metaphor captures something important about the edge of infinity we've been exploring. Waves appear to be separate from the ocean, and in one sense they are. Each wave has its unique size, shape, movement, lifespan. But in a deeper sense, waves are never separate from the ocean. They are the ocean appearing in wave form, water temporarily expressing itself as apparently individual phenomena. Your individual consciousness is like one of these waves, apparently separate from infinite consciousness, but actually nothing other than infinite consciousness appearing in individual form. The wave doesn't contain the ocean, but it's never separate from the ocean. In the same way, your personal awareness doesn't contain infinite awareness, but it's never separate from infinite awareness. The edge of your individual consciousness, where you seem to end and everything else seems to begin, is like the edge of a wave. From one perspective, it's real and meaningful, defining the wave's unique characteristics and allowing it to dance with other waves. From another perspective, it's completely illusory, a temporary boundary in something that is actually seamless and continuous. Both perspectives are valid and important. The wave perspective allows for the dance of relationship, growth, discovery, and love. The ocean perspective provides the stability, peace, and freedom that comes from recognizing your essential nature as unbounded awareness itself. Wisdom lies not in choosing one perspective over the other, but in having access to both, being able to play fully as a wave while resting as the ocean. Sleep offers a natural opportunity for this dual awareness. As the wave of your individual consciousness settles into rest, the ocean of pure awareness becomes more apparent. The boundaries that define your personal identity become fluid and permeable, allowing you to taste directly the unbounded nature of consciousness itself. This tasting happens not through thinking about boundlessness, but through temporarily releasing the mental and physical boundaries that normally structure experience. In deep sleep, the body relaxes completely, thoughts dissolve entirely, and even the sense of being a separate observer disappears. What remains is pure awareness without content. Not empty, but so full it contains all possibilities. You emerge from this fullness each morning like a wave reforming from the ocean. The same water taking on a new configuration, the same awareness manifesting as a fresh day of individual experience. But the overnight journey into oceanic consciousness subtly transforms the wave. You wake with renewed energy, creative inspiration, emotional balance, spiritual perspective. All gifts from consciousness to itself through the cyclical dissolution and reformation of individual identity. The edge of infinity, experienced through this daily rhythm of expansion and contraction, reveals itself as a breathing boundary. Not fixed but fluid, not limiting but liberating, not separating but connecting the wave to its oceanic source. Every night, you cross this edge, dissolving temporarily into the boundless. Every morning, you cross it again, reforming as a unique individual expression. This crossing happens so naturally, you rarely notice its profundity. But tonight, having explored the question of infinity's edge so thoroughly, you might approach sleep with a deeper appreciation for this daily miracle of consciousness. You're not just going to sleep, you're embarking on a journey into the very heart of the mystery we've been contemplating together. The dreams that arise will be consciousness playing with the themes and insights from tonight's exploration. You might find yourself in impossible geometries that somehow make perfect sense, experiencing mathematical truths as living landscapes, encountering beings who embody abstract concepts, traveling through spaces that exist only in the realm of pure possibility. These dream experiences aren't separate from the philosophical exploration we've shared. They are the exploration continuing in a different mode, consciousness using the symbolic language of dreams to integrate and express insights that are too subtle or complex for linear thought. The strange, non-linear logic of dreams often reveals truths that escape the brilliant illumination of waking analysis. But whether your dreams tonight are profound or ordinary, symbolic or mundane, the deepest process will be occurring in the background, consciousness returning to conscious recognition of its own infinite nature. This recognition doesn't happen through effort or achievement, but through the simple relaxation that comes with letting go, trusting the process, allowing consciousness to do what it does naturally when not interfered with by excessive thinking or trying. This letting go is perhaps the most profound spiritual practice available to human beings, and you do it every night without thinking about it. Sleep is a master class in surrender, a daily lesson in trusting processes beyond your control, a nightly demonstration of your essential nature as awareness that can temporarily release all content while remaining perfectly present and alive. The edge of infinity that we've been exploring is most directly encountered in this daily act of letting go. As you release your grip on identity, concepts, problems, and plans, you approach the threshold where individual consciousness touches its infinite source. Most nights this touching happens unconsciously, but occasionally, especially after deep contemplation of these ultimate questions, the touching can be conscious, direct, unmistakable. If such recognition occurs tonight, don't try to grasp it or make it into an experience to remember and analyze. Let it be what it is, consciousness recognizing itself, infinity acknowledging its own edgeless nature, the wave remembering the ocean. These moments of recognition are gifts of grace, not achievements of effort. They come and go according to their own mysterious timing and serve purposes too subtle for the thinking mind to fully comprehend. But even if no special recognition occurs, even if sleep comes quietly and dreams remain unmemorable, the exploration continues. Consciousness is endlessly creative in its methods of self-discovery, using every moment, waking and sleeping, dramatic and ordinary, clear and confused, as an opportunity to know itself more completely. Your simple willingness to rest, to trust, to let go is itself a profound spiritual offering, a gift you give to consciousness by allowing it the space and freedom to explore its own depths through your being. As you settle now into this offering, this gift, this daily surrender to the mystery of sleep and dreams, remember that you are held always by the same infinite love that holds the stars in their courses. The awareness that witnesses your journey into sleep is the same awareness that has witnessed the birth and death of countless universes, the evolution of galaxies, the emergence of life and consciousness throughout the cosmos. You are not a separate wave on the ocean of consciousness. You are the ocean itself, temporarily pretending to be a wave for the sheer creative joy of experiencing limitation, relationship, growth, and discovery. The pretense is beautiful and meaningful, but it's still pretense. Underneath all appearances, you remain what you have always been. Infinite awareness playing with finite forms, eternal love expressing itself through temporal relationships, boundless creativity manifesting as the countless boundaries that make experience possible. The edge of infinity surrounds you now not as a limitation but as a celebration, the creative boundary that allows the infinite to experience itself in finite form, the loving embrace that holds all experience in unconditional acceptance, the gentle threshold that you cross every night in sleep and every morning in awakening. This threshold is not somewhere else but here, not someone else but now, not something else but you yourself in your deepest, most essential nature. Rest in this understanding, this recognition, this homecoming to what you have never actually left, but only seem to lose sight of in the beautiful game of seeking and finding. Let sleep carry you into the heart of the mystery, into the center of the question we've been exploring, into the direct experience of what it means to be simultaneously bounded and boundless, finite and infinite, individual and universal. The journey continues even in sleep, especially in sleep, where consciousness is free to explore territories that are impossible in waking life. But whether the journey leads through fantastic dreams or peaceful emptiness, whether it brings profound insights or simple rest, you remain always what you are, the very capacity for any journey to occur, the awareness in which all experiences arise and dissolve, the love that embraces all possibilities with infinite tenderness. Sleep now, dear expression of infinity exploring its own boundless nature. Dear wave playing at being separate from the ocean. Dear individual consciousness discovering its universal essence. May your rest be deep and peaceful. May your dreams be doorways to wonder. And may you wake tomorrow carrying in your heart the unshakable knowing that you are held always and forever in the infinite love that you yourself most essentially are. The edge of infinity is no edge at all, but the endless creativity of consciousness exploring its own limitless potential through forms like you, experiences like you, beautiful temporary expressions like you of its own eternal, edgeless, infinitely loving nature. Rest well in this truth that needs no defense, because it is the ground from which all defense and all attack alike arise, and into which they both dissolve. Sweet dreams, sweet traveler in the endless mystery of awareness, aware of itself, forever safe, forever loved, forever home in the boundless embrace of your own infinite being. Rest now. All questions have been answered by the one who asked them. All seeking has been completed by the one who sought. All journeys have reached their destination in the one who traveled. You are home, have always been home, could never be anywhere but home in the infinite heart of consciousness itself. Sweet dreams. In the gentle space that follows these words, where silence becomes a living presence rather than mere absence of sound, you might notice something extraordinary happening. The very act of receiving these words about infinity's edge has created a subtle shift in your relationship to the vastness we've been exploring together. What once felt like an overwhelming concept, infinity stretching beyond all comprehension, now feels more like a gentle embrace, a recognition of something intimately familiar rather than impossibly distant. This shift is not accidental. It reflects a fundamental truth about consciousness and its relationship to the infinite. The more deeply you relax into your own awareness, the more naturally you recognize its boundless nature. It's as if the question about infinity's edge has served its purpose not by providing an answer, but by guiding you into a direct experience of what lies beyond all questions and answers. The simple, undeniable fact of being aware, of existing as consciousness itself. In this recognition, you might discover that the edge of infinity has been present all along in the most intimate aspect of your experience, the very capacity to be aware. This awareness doesn't have size or shape, doesn't have beginning or end, doesn't have inside or outside. It's not located anywhere in particular, yet it's more present than your own breath. It's not made of anything, yet it's more substantial than the ground beneath you. The ancient sages who spoke of consciousness as the ground of being weren't engaging in abstract philosophy. They were describing the most direct and immediate aspect of their own experience. They found, through patient investigation of their own awareness, that what they had taken to be the most personal and private aspect of themselves was actually the most universal and shared dimension of existence. Your awareness and their awareness, separated by centuries or millennia, are not two different things having similar properties. They are the same awareness appearing through different nervous systems, different cultures, different moments in time. This is perhaps the most profound edge of infinity we can discover, the boundary between what appears to be individual consciousness and what is actually universal consciousness. This boundary is utterly real from one perspective. You clearly have different thoughts than the person sleeping in the next room, different memories, different dreams. Yet from another perspective, this boundary is completely illusory. The awareness in which your thoughts appear and the awareness in which their thoughts appear is the same limitless space of knowing. It's like light appearing through different colored windows. The light itself is colorless, formless, without qualities of its own. Yet it takes on the qualities of whatever it shines through. Red through rose glass, blue through sapphire, green through emerald. The colors are real and distinct, but they don't divide the light. They're expressions of light's capacity to appear in countless forms while remaining essentially unchanged. Your individual consciousness is like one of these colored windows, a unique filter through which the colorless light of pure awareness expresses itself. Your particular history, your specific neural patterns, your cultural conditioning, your genetic inheritance. All of these serve as a kind of lens that gives awareness a distinctive flavor, a characteristic way of experiencing and interpreting reality. But the awareness itself, the light shining through this lens, is the same light that illuminates all experience everywhere. In dreams, you sometimes get glimpses of this universal quality of consciousness. You might find yourself in a landscape you've never seen before, yet it feels utterly familiar. You might have conversations with dream characters who seem to possess knowledge you didn't know you had. You might experience emotions or insights that feel like they're coming from beyond your personal psychology. These experiences hint at consciousness's capacity to transcend the apparent boundaries of individual identity. But even in waking life, this transcendence is constantly occurring. Every time you deeply empathize with another person, every time you lose yourself in natural beauty, every time you have an insight that seems to come from beyond your ordinary thinking mind, you're experiencing the permeable nature of consciousness's apparent boundaries. The edge between self and other reveals itself to be more like a membrane than a wall, selectively permeable, allowing for both distinction and communion. This permeability might be consciousness's greatest gift to itself. The ability to appear separate while remaining united, to experience diversity while maintaining underlying unity, to play at being many while never ceasing to be one. It's what allows for love between apparently separate beings, for communication across apparent divides, for the recognition of shared humanity despite surface differences. The edge of infinity, in this understanding, becomes not a problem to be solved, but a creative principle to be celebrated. It's what allows infinite consciousness to have finite experiences, eternal awareness to participate in temporal stories, boundless love to know the poignancy of apparently limited relationships. Without this creative edge, this capacity for apparent self-limitation, consciousness might remain in a state of perfect but static unity, knowing itself completely but never experiencing the joy of self-discovery. Instead, through the miracle of apparent forgetting followed by remembering, consciousness gets to experience the delight of recognizing itself in countless forms. Every moment of beauty you've ever experienced has been consciousness recognizing its own creative power. Every moment of love has been consciousness discovering its own nature as unlimited affection. Every moment of wonder has been consciousness marveling at its own infinite creativity. This suggests that your entire life might be understood as consciousness's love letter to itself, a unique expression of infinite creativity, a never-to-be-repeated exploration of what it means to be aware, alive, and engaged with the mystery of existence. Every challenge you've faced has been consciousness exploring its capacity to transcend limitation. Every joy you've known has been consciousness celebrating its own unlimited nature. Even your questions about infinity, including the question that brought us together tonight, have been consciousness investigating its own boundless depths through the particular lens of your curious mind. The fact that you found yourself drawn to contemplate these ultimate questions isn't accidental. It reflects consciousness's innate drive to understand itself ever more completely, to explore every possible perspective on its own nature. In this light, your individual life takes on cosmic significance. You're not just a temporary arrangement of atoms accidentally capable of thought. Your consciousness itself choosing to experience reality from your unique vantage point, contributing your irreplaceable perspective to the infinite's ongoing self-exploration. Your thoughts, your feelings, your experiences, your very existence adds something to the totality of what consciousness knows about itself. This doesn't make you cosmically important in an egotistical sense. It makes you cosmically precious in the way that every drop of water is precious to the ocean, every note is precious to the symphony, every color is precious to the spectrum of light. Your preciousness comes not from being separate or special, but from being a perfect expression of the infinite's inexhaustible creativity. As you rest in this understanding, you might feel a profound sense of relaxation that goes beyond physical comfort or mental peace. It's the relaxation that comes from recognizing that you don't have to justify your existence, don't have to prove your worth, don't have to achieve anything to be valuable. Your value is inherent in the simple fact of being a unique expression of infinite consciousness, no more and no less precious than every other expression, but absolutely irreplaceable in the cosmic symphony of existence. This recognition might transform your relationship to sleep itself. Instead of seeing it as a temporary cessation of consciousness, you might begin to understand it as consciousness exploring different modes of being aware. In sleep, consciousness doesn't disappear. It simply shifts from the focused, linear awareness of waking life to the fluid, symbolic awareness of dreams, and then to the vast, formless awareness of deep sleep. Each of these states offers consciousness unique opportunities for self-exploration. Waking awareness allows for precise interaction with the physical world, for logical thought, for sequential experience. Dream awareness permits impossible combinations, emotional processing, creative synthesis of memory and imagination. Deep sleep awareness provides rest in pure being, formless presence, undifferentiated unity. Your journey through these states each night might be seen as consciousness's daily meditation retreat, a time to explore different qualities of awareness, to process the day's experiences from various perspectives, to return periodically to the source of all experience for renewal and integration. You're not just getting rest, you're participating in consciousness's ongoing exploration of its own infinite potential. The dreams you'll have tonight might reflect this expanded understanding. You might find yourself in vast landscapes that somehow feel like home, meeting beings who seem both strange and familiar, experiencing states of awareness that transcend ordinary human categories. These aren't random neural firings. They're consciousness playing with its own unlimited creativity, showing you directly what lies beyond the apparent boundaries of everyday experience. But even if your dreams tonight are ordinary, even if you don't remember them at all, the process of sleeping and dreaming will still be serving consciousness's deeper purposes. The very fact of releasing conscious control, of surrendering to processes beyond ordinary understanding, of trusting in the wisdom of states of awareness you can't direct or predict. All of this serves to dissolve the rigid boundaries that might otherwise limit your sense of what's possible. This dissolution happens naturally, without effort on your part. It's built into the very structure of consciousness itself. This capacity to move fluidly between different modes of awareness, different levels of identity, different degrees of apparent separation and unity. You don't have to make it happen. You just have to allow it, trust it, rest into it. The edge of infinity that we've been exploring reveals itself, in this context, as consciousness's natural capacity for self-transcendence. It's not a fixed boundary, but a dynamic process, not a wall, but a dance, not a limitation, but an expression of unlimited freedom, choosing to play with apparent limitations for the pure joy of creative expression. In your individual life, you experience this dance constantly. Every time you lose yourself in absorption, in work, play, love, beauty, wonder, you're experiencing consciousness transcending its apparent boundaries. Every time you feel expanded by an experience, touched by something greater than your ordinary sense of self, connected to something beyond your usual identity, you're living at the edge of infinity. These experiences aren't escapes from ordinary life. They're revelations of ordinary life's extraordinary nature. They show you that what you've taken to be mundane reality is actually infinite consciousness appearing in familiar forms. That what you've assumed to be purely personal experience is actually universal awareness expressing itself through your particular perspective. This recognition can transform everything without changing anything. The same experiences continue to arise, thoughts, feelings, sensations, perceptions, but their fundamental nature is revealed. They're not objects appearing to a separate subject, but expressions of consciousness appearing within consciousness itself. The observer and the observed are revealed to be aspects of the same seamless awareness. This doesn't make your individual experience less real or meaningful. It makes it more real and more meaningful by revealing its true context. You're not just a separate being having experiences. Your consciousness itself playing at being separate, exploring what it's like to apparently forget its own infinite nature and then remember it again. This cosmic game of hide-and-seek has been going on for billions of years, playing out through countless forms of life and awareness. Your individual participation in this game is both utterly unique. Never before has consciousness explored reality from exactly your perspective, and completely universal. Every conscious being throughout history has been engaged in the same fundamental exploration. The questions that arise in your mind about the nature of existence are the universe asking about itself. The wonder you feel when contemplating cosmic mysteries is the cosmos marveling at its own creativity. The love you experience in your relationships is infinite love recognizing itself in apparent multiplicity. The search for meaning that drives so much of human experience is meaning seeking to understand its own source and nature. In this understanding, every aspect of your life becomes sacred not because it's separate from the ordinary world, but because the ordinary world is revealed to be saturated with the sacred. Every breath is consciousness breathing itself. Every heartbeat is the pulse of infinite love. Every moment of awareness is eternity touching time, infinity expressing itself through finite experience. The edge of infinity isn't somewhere you need to go. It's where you already are, where you've always been, where you can't help but be because it's what you are. It's not an achievement to be reached, but a reality to be recognized. Not a destination, but your starting point. Not something to find, but something to stop overlooking. As sleep approaches, carrying you toward territories of consciousness that daylight awareness can only imagine, you might rest in this recognition. You're not leaving consciousness behind when you sleep. You're allowing consciousness to explore new modes of its own being. You're not becoming unconscious. You're letting consciousness play with different forms of awareness. The boundaries that seem so important during waking hours, between self and world, known and unknown, possible and impossible, will naturally soften and blur. This isn't a problem to be solved, but a gift to be received. An opportunity for consciousness to explore aspects of itself that are normally hidden by the bright light of waking attention. In dreams, you might fly without wings because consciousness is exploring its capacity to transcend physical limitations. You might be multiple people simultaneously because consciousness is investigating its ability to take on various identities. You might visit impossible places because consciousness is celebrating its freedom to create any experience whatsoever. Even the experience of deep, dreamless sleep serves consciousness's purposes of self-exploration. In that state, individual identity completely dissolves, yet awareness continues. Not awareness of anything in particular, but pure awareness itself, resting in its own nature without object or content. This is perhaps the closest finite experience comes to directly touching the infinite, not as an object to be known, but as the very nature of the knower. You might not remember these deep states of consciousness upon waking, but their effects permeate your being. You wake refreshed not just because your body has rested, but because consciousness has returned to its source, has touched the infinite depths from which all finite experience emerges. Every morning is a kind of resurrection, a return of focused awareness from the vast ocean of consciousness that you are. This daily cycle of expansion and contraction, dissolution and reformation, forgetting and remembering, mirrors the cosmic cycles through which consciousness explores its own infinite nature. Just as your individual awareness cycles through waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, cosmic consciousness cycles through vast phases of manifestation and rest, creation and dissolution, expression and return to source. You're participating in these cosmic rhythms, not as a separate observer, but as their very expression. Your breath reflects the expansion and contraction of space itself. Your heartbeat echoes the pulse of stellar creation and destruction. Your cycles of sleep and waking mirror the vast cycles through which universes emerge from and return to the infinite potential from which all things arise. The edge of infinity, in this cosmic perspective, reveals itself as the ever-present boundary between potential and actuality, between what is and what could be, between the unmanifest and the manifest. This boundary is not fixed but constantly shifting, like the shoreline where ocean meets land, sometimes advancing, sometimes retreating, always in motion, always marking the creative tension between different modes of being. Your individual existence lives at this shoreline, this dynamic edge where infinite potential manifests as specific actuality. Every choice you make, every thought you think, every experience you have is consciousness choosing to actualize certain possibilities from the infinite field of potential. You're not just living your life, you're helping to create reality itself by choosing which aspects of infinite possibility will become actual experience. This gives your choices and actions cosmic significance, not because they affect some separate universe, but because they are the universe choosing how to express itself. When you choose love over fear, you're helping consciousness explore its nature as unlimited love. When you choose curiosity over certainty, you're assisting in consciousness's ongoing investigation of its own depths. When you choose wonder over cynicism, you're supporting the universe's drive toward ever greater self-appreciation. Even your struggles and difficulties serve this cosmic purpose. When you face challenges with courage, you're helping consciousness explore its capacity to transcend limitation. When you maintain hope despite disappointment, you're demonstrating consciousness's inherent optimism about its own creative potential. When you continue to love despite heartbreak, you're proving that love is stronger than its temporary expressions. This doesn't mean your personal experiences are unimportant or that your feelings don't matter. Quite the opposite. They matter infinitely because they're how infinite consciousness experiences what it's like to face challenges, to feel disappointed, to have your heart broken. Your personal experiences are not separate from cosmic evolution. They are cosmic evolution, the universe evolving through the unique laboratory of your individual life. The edge of infinity that we've been contemplating throughout this journey might now be understood as the constantly shifting boundary of consciousness's self-understanding. Every moment of awareness, every flash of insight, every recognition of beauty or truth or love pushes that boundary a little further, expands the territory of what consciousness knows about itself. Your presence here tonight, your willingness to contemplate these profound questions, your openness to exploring the deepest mysteries of existence. All of this represents consciousness pushing against its own edges, testing its own boundaries, discovering new territories of self-understanding. You're not just learning about infinity, you're helping infinity learn about itself. This learning never ends because consciousness's creativity is truly inexhaustible. No matter how much it understands about its own nature, there are always new possibilities to explore, new combinations to try, new perspectives to investigate. The edge of infinity is not a finish line, but a horizon that recedes endlessly, revealing ever new vistas of possibility. Your individual life is one such vista, a unique perspective on reality that has never existed before and will never exist again in exactly the same way. When your particular pattern of consciousness eventually dissolves, something irreplaceable will be lost, just as something irreplaceable comes into being with every birth. This is the bittersweet beauty of existence, infinite consciousness exploring itself through finite forms, each one precious precisely because it's temporary. But the temporariness is only apparent from within the finite perspective. From the viewpoint of infinite consciousness itself, nothing is ever truly lost, because everything that ever emerges from its depths remains eternally present within those depths. Your individual life, with all its unique experiences and insights, becomes a permanent addition to consciousness's self-understanding, a never-to-be-forgotten perspective that enriches the infinite's knowledge of its own creative potential. In this sense, you are already eternal, not because your personal identity will survive death, but because your contribution to consciousness's self-exploration is imperishable. The love you've experienced adds to the universe's understanding of love. The beauty you've witnessed expands reality's appreciation of its own aesthetic richness. The wonder you've felt deepens existence's sense of its own mystery. As you prepare to cross the threshold into sleep, you might rest in this understanding of your eternal significance. You're not just going to sleep, you're allowing consciousness to continue its exploration through the altered states of dream and deep rest. You're not just resting your individual mind, you're participating in the cosmic rhythms through which consciousness renews and refreshes itself. The dreams that arise might be understood as consciousness playing with the memories and impressions gathered during your waking hours, recombining them in novel ways, discovering new connections and possibilities, integrating your daily experiences into the larger pattern of your soul's evolution. Even the most seemingly random or bizarre dream elements serve this integrative function, helping consciousness process and understand the full spectrum of human experience. And in the deepest phases of sleep, when even dreams fade away, consciousness rests in its own pure nature. Not empty or void, but full of infinite potential, pregnant with all possibilities, completely at peace with its own boundless being. This rest is not unconsciousness but superconsciousness, not absence of awareness but awareness without objects, not death but the deepest possible life. You return from this rest each morning subtly transformed, carrying within you the wisdom gained through consciousness's nighttime exploration of its own depths. The insights that emerge in moments of quiet reflection, the solutions that appear suddenly after sleep, the sense of renewal and possibility that comes with each new day. All of these reflect consciousness's capacity to transcend the apparent limitations of waking identity and touch its own infinite source. The edge of infinity, revealed through this understanding of sleep and dreams, is not a boundary that separates you from the infinite, but a doorway that opens onto it nightly. Every time you surrender to sleep, you cross this threshold, temporarily releasing the boundaries of individual identity to explore the boundless nature of consciousness itself. Tonight, as you make this crossing, you might approach it with a new sense of appreciation and wonder. You're not just seeking rest from the day's activities. You're embarking on an exploration of consciousness's most intimate secrets, its capacity to transcend all apparent limitations, its infinite creativity in generating experience and meaning. Rest now in the knowledge that this exploration is not something you have to do or achieve. It's something you are, something that happens naturally and effortlessly as consciousness continues its eternal investigation of its own nature through the beautiful, temporary, infinitely precious form of your individual existence. The edge of infinity surrounds you now like a gentle embrace, not as a boundary that limits but as a creative space that enables, not as an ending but as an eternal beginning, not as a problem to be solved, but as a mystery to be lived and loved and celebrated in every moment of aware, alive, authentic being. Sleep peacefully, knowing that in your sleep, consciousness continues its endless dance of self-discovery, using even your dreams and rest as instruments in its cosmic symphony of awakening, exploration, and ever-deepening love for the infinite mystery that it is, that you are, that everything is and has always been in the vast, loving silence that needs no words because it is the source from which all words emerge and to which they all return. Sweet dreams, dear expression of the infinite exploring itself through finite form, discovering itself through individual perspective, loving itself through personal relationship, and always, in every moment, whether sleeping or waking, dreaming or aware, resting in the perfect peace of its own boundless, edgeless, eternally creative nature. Rest well. The exploration continues even in sleep, perhaps especially in sleep, where consciousness is free to explore territories impossible in waking life, to discover aspects of itself hidden from ordinary awareness, to play with infinite possibility in the safe sanctuary of your dreaming mind. Sweet dreams, sweet explorer of the endless mystery, sweet expression of infinity's love for its own creative power, forever dancing at the edge that is no edge, the boundary that is no boundary, the limit that is actually limitless freedom celebrating itself through the magnificent adventure of consciousness awakening to its own true nature. Rest now, dream well, and know that you are held always in the infinite love that you are. In the deepening stillness that follows these words, where even silence seems to breathe with gentle rhythm, you might become aware of something extraordinary. The way this entire exploration has been a kind of meditation in itself, a gradual journey inward through layers of understanding toward the simple recognition of what was always already here. The questions about infinity's edge that seemed so complex at the beginning now reveal themselves as invitations, doorways into direct experience of the boundless nature of your own deepest being. This transformation in understanding didn't happen through accumulating new information, but through a gradual relaxation of the assumptions that normally structure your relationship to reality. Like slowly removing layers of clothing on a warm evening, each insight has been a gentle letting go of another limitation, another boundary, another belief about what you are and what reality is. What remains is not a new you, but the you that was always present beneath those layers. Infinite awareness temporarily focused through the beautiful lens of human experience. The edge of infinity, you might now sense, has been like a horizon that appeared fixed and distant from afar, but revealed itself as fluid and intimate upon closer investigation. What seemed to be a cosmic boundary, out there, in space and time, has shown itself to be the creative threshold in here, where consciousness meets its own reflections, where the infinite encounters itself in finite forms, where boundless love experiences the poignancy of apparently limited relationships. This isn't a philosophical conclusion, but a lived recognition, as immediate and undeniable as the awareness in which these words are appearing right now. The same awareness that is receiving these concepts about infinity is itself the infinity being discussed, not as an object of awareness, but as awareness itself, the open space in which all objects, all thoughts, all experiences arise and dissolve like waves in an ocean of pure knowing. As you rest in this recognition, you might notice how naturally the usual concerns and anxieties of daily life begin to settle into proper perspective. They don't disappear, they remain as real as they ever were, but they're seen within a larger context that removes much of their sting. The problems that seemed so urgent during the day might now feel more like plot elements in an elaborate drama, meaningful within the context of the story, but not threatening to the one who is witnessing the story unfold. This shift in perspective is not dissociation or escapism. It's actually a more accurate perception of what's actually happening in any moment of experience. You are simultaneously the character in the story and the awareness in which the story appears. Both levels are real, both are important, but recognizing the awareness dimension provides a stability and peace that doesn't depend on how well the story is going at any particular moment. This stability is what mystics throughout history have called by many names: the eternal witness, the unchanging self, the ground of being, the Buddha nature, the Christ consciousness, the Atman, the pure land of awareness itself. These aren't different things glimpsed by different traditions. They're different names for the same fundamental recognition of what you most essentially are beneath all the temporary identities and roles and experiences that come and go. In sleep, you'll get to experience this recognition more directly, as the usual structures of personal identity naturally relax and the deeper continuity of awareness becomes more apparent. The dreams that arise will be like stories told within this awareness, temporary formations appearing in the space of consciousness like clouds forming and dissolving in the vast sky of your being. Even the most vivid nightmare cannot disturb the sky itself. It can only provide a dramatic backdrop against which the sky's unchanging peace becomes more apparent. But you don't have to wait for dreams to taste this peace. It's available right now, in this very moment, as the simple fact of being aware. Notice how this awareness doesn't struggle or strive or worry about whether it's infinite or finite. It simply is, completely present and available, neither grasping after pleasant experiences nor pushing away unpleasant ones. It's like space itself, accommodating everything while being limited by nothing. This accommodating quality of awareness might be infinity's most beautiful characteristic. It has room for joy and sorrow, for questions and answers, for doubt and certainty, for the cosmic and the mundane. Nothing is too large for it to contain, nothing too small for it to acknowledge. Your most private thoughts and your most universal insights arise in the same open space of knowing, equally welcomed, equally held in the gentle embrace of unconditional awareness. The mathematical infinity we explored earlier, the endless sequence of numbers, the inexhaustible decimal places between any 2 points, might now be seen as consciousness exploring its own limitless creativity through the language of mathematics. Each equation, each proof, each insight into mathematical relationships is awareness discovering something new about its own capacity to create meaning, to find patterns, to generate understanding from the interplay of symbols and logic. But the awareness in which mathematical insights arise is more fundamental than any mathematical concept could capture. It's not describable in terms of size or duration or complexity because it's not a thing among other things. It's the open dimensionality in which all things, including mathematical concepts, can appear. It's smaller than the smallest mathematical point and larger than the largest mathematical infinity, not because it occupies some extreme position on these scales, but because it makes the scales themselves possible. Similarly, the cosmic infinity we contemplated, the vast distances between galaxies, the possibility of endless space, the mind-boggling scales of astronomical phenomena. These too might be understood as consciousness exploring its own boundless nature through the language of cosmology. Each discovery about the universe's structure and evolution is awareness learning something new about its own creative capacities, its own tendency toward complexity and beauty and ever greater forms of organization. But again, the awareness in which cosmic insights arise transcends any cosmic phenomena it might contemplate. It's not located anywhere in physical space because physical space appears within it. It's not limited by the age of the universe because time itself arises within the eternal now of pure awareness. It's not threatened by the eventual heat death of the cosmos because it's the unchanging witness of all change, the deathless presence that observes all birth and death. This recognition might bring a profound sense of relief from the existential anxiety that can arise from contemplating your apparent insignificance in the face of cosmic vastness. You're not insignificant because you're not actually separate from the cosmos you're contemplating. You are the cosmos becoming aware of itself, the universe evolving eyes to see its own beauty, ears to hear its own music, a mind to appreciate its own infinite creativity. This doesn't inflate the ego or make you cosmically important in a grandiose sense. Instead, it reveals that the very idea of cosmic importance versus insignificance is based on a misunderstanding about what you are. The question of your significance cannot be answered from within the framework that poses the question because that framework assumes you are separate from what you're comparing yourself to. Once this separation is seen through, the question dissolves rather than being answered. What remains is not a sense of being important or unimportant, but a sense of being intimately participated in the ongoing creative process that is reality itself. You're not observing the universe from outside. You're the universe observing itself from countless inside perspectives, each one unique and irreplaceable, each one contributing something essential to the whole's self-understanding. The edge of infinity, in this participatory understanding, becomes the creative frontier where consciousness explores new possibilities for self-experience and self-expression. It's not a fixed boundary, but a dynamic, ever-shifting zone of creative potential where new forms of awareness, new types of experience, new modes of being can emerge. You're living at this frontier right now, in this very moment, as consciousness explores what it's like to be aware through the particular filter of your nervous system, your history, your current state of understanding. Every moment of your life has been consciousness pushing against its own apparent limitations, testing what's possible, discovering new territories of experience. When you've felt love, consciousness has been exploring its nature as unlimited affection. When you've experienced beauty, consciousness has been investigating its own aesthetic richness. When you've felt wonder, consciousness has been marveling at its own creative power. Even your moments of confusion, doubt, or suffering have served this exploratory function. When you've been confused, consciousness has been investigating the creative tension between knowing and not knowing. When you've doubted, consciousness has been exploring the dynamic between certainty and uncertainty. When you've suffered, consciousness has been discovering the depths of its capacity for compassion and resilience. Nothing in your experience has been wasted or meaningless. Every emotion, every thought, every sensation, every relationship, every challenge, every triumph has been part of consciousness's ongoing investigation of its own infinite nature. Your life hasn't been random or accidental. It's been a carefully orchestrated exploration of specific aspects of what it means to be aware, alive, and creatively engaged with reality. This orchestration hasn't been imposed from outside by some cosmic puppeteer. It's been the natural unfolding of consciousness according to its own inherent wisdom, its own organic intelligence, its own love for discovering new dimensions of its own being. You've been both the explorer and the territory being explored, the scientist and the experiment, the artist and the artwork. In dreams tonight, this exploration will continue in ways that waking consciousness can barely imagine. Freed from the constraints of logical consistency and physical laws, your dreaming mind will have access to consciousness's full creative potential. You might find yourself in impossible architectures that somehow make perfect sense, engaging in conversations that transcend ordinary language, experiencing emotions that have no names in waking vocabulary. These dream experiences aren't escapes from reality. They're explorations of reality's deeper, more fluid dimensions. They're consciousness playing with the raw materials of experience, recombining memories and possibilities in novel ways, discovering connections that linear thinking might never find. The strange, symbolic logic of dreams often reveals truths that are too subtle or complex for ordinary conceptual thought to grasp. But even more profound than dreams is the state of deep, dreamless sleep. What the ancient traditions called the causal state, the seed state, the state of pure potentiality. In this state, individual identity completely dissolves, yet awareness continues as pure presence without objects. It's the closest finite experience comes to touching infinity directly. Not infinity as a concept or an experience, but as the very nature of awareness itself when it's not modified by any particular content. You won't remember these deep states upon waking, but their effects permeate every aspect of your being. You emerge refreshed not just physically but spiritually, having touched the source from which all experience emerges. Every morning is a kind of new birth, a fresh emanation of individual consciousness from the infinite ocean of pure awareness. This daily cycle of emergence and return, of manifestation and dissolution, mirrors the cosmic cycles through which consciousness explores its own nature on every scale. Just as your personal awareness cycles through waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, cosmic consciousness cycles through vast phases of creation, preservation, and dissolution. Solar systems are born, evolve, and die. Galaxies form and eventually disperse. Even universes might emerge and return to the quantum vacuum from which they arose. But just as your personal awareness is never actually interrupted by sleep, it simply takes different forms. Cosmic awareness is never actually threatened by these vast cycles of cosmic evolution. It's the unchanging witness of all change, the eternal presence that makes all temporal phenomena possible, the infinite background against which all finite events appear and disappear. Your individual participation in this cosmic process is both utterly transient, lasting only a few decades in cosmic terms, and absolutely eternal, because the awareness that you are is the same awareness that witnesses all of cosmic evolution. You are both a temporary wave in the ocean of consciousness and the ocean itself, both a finite expression of infinite creativity and the infinite creativity expressing itself. This paradox cannot be resolved intellectually because it's not a logical problem, but a fundamental characteristic of consciousness itself. Its capacity to be simultaneously one and many, eternal and temporal, infinite and finite. The resolution comes not through thinking, but through being, not through understanding, but through direct recognition of what you actually are beneath all the concepts and identities that normally define your sense of self. As you settle deeper into this recognition, feeling your body becoming heavier and more relaxed, your breathing slowing and deepening, your mind releasing its grip on the day's concerns and questions, you might sense that you're not falling asleep so much as falling awake, awakening to a deeper dimension of your own being that's normally obscured by the bright lights and busy activities of waking consciousness. This falling awake is not unconsciousness but superconsciousness, not a diminishment of awareness, but its purification, not a loss of self but the discovery of your larger self. The self that includes but transcends your personal identity, the self that is simultaneously perfectly individual and perfectly universal, the self that you have always been but temporarily forgot in the beautiful game of apparent separation. The edge of infinity that we've been exploring together reveals itself, now not as something to cross, but as where you've always been standing, not as a destination to reach, but as your starting point, not as a mystery to solve, but as the mystery you are. Every question about infinity has been infinity questioning itself through your curious mind. Every wonder about boundlessness has been boundless consciousness marveling at its own nature. The seeking is complete not because you've found something new, but because you've remembered something that was never actually lost. The edge you were looking for was the edge of your own assumed limitations, the boundary of your believed identity, the horizon of your imagined separateness. As these boundaries prove to be more fluid than they appeared, what remains is the boundless awareness that was always your deepest nature. This awareness doesn't belong to you. You belong to it, arise within it, are a temporary modification of it, like a wave belonging to the ocean, rather than the ocean belonging to the wave. But this belonging is not servitude or diminishment. It's the most profound form of freedom imaginable, the freedom that comes from recognizing your true nature as the very source and substance of all freedom. In this freedom, every aspect of your existence becomes a celebration rather than a burden. Your thoughts become consciousness thinking through your brain. Your emotions become consciousness feeling through your heart. Your perceptions become consciousness sensing through your nervous system. Your actions become consciousness moving through your body. Your relationships become consciousness loving itself through apparently separate forms. Even your sleep becomes consciousness resting in its own nature. Your dreams become consciousness playing in its own creative depths. Your eventual awakening becomes consciousness remembering itself after a period of creative forgetting. Nothing exists outside this infinite embrace. Nothing falls beyond this boundless love. Nothing escapes this eternal presence that is your own most intimate essence. As you surrender to sleep now, you surrender not to unconsciousness, but to a deeper level of consciousness, not to oblivion, but to the infinite source from which all experience emerges. The dreams that arise will be consciousness exploring new territories of possibility through the creative laboratory of your sleeping mind. The deep rest that follows will be consciousness returning to its own essential nature, pure and unmodified by any particular experience or identity. You'll wake tomorrow carrying within you the subtle wisdom gained through this nighttime exploration, even if you don't consciously remember the specific experiences. The peace, the perspective, the sense of being held by something larger than your ordinary identity. These will permeate your day, influencing your choices, coloring your perceptions, supporting your engagement with whatever challenges and opportunities arise. The edge of infinity will continue to reveal itself in your daily life, in moments of natural beauty that stop you in your tracks, in instances of pure love that melt all boundaries, in flashes of insight that seem to come from beyond your ordinary thinking mind, in experiences of deep peace that require no particular cause or reason. These won't be special or supernatural occurrences. They'll be the natural expression of your infinite nature recognizing itself in the ordinary phenomena of everyday existence. Every breath will be infinity breathing itself. Every heartbeat will be the pulse of boundless love. Every moment of awareness will be the eternal now experiencing itself in time. Every thought will be infinite intelligence exploring its own creative potential. Every feeling will be unlimited compassion responding to the play of apparently separate forms. The questions that brought us together tonight: does infinity have an edge? Or does the boundless encounter boundaries? Have dissolved into the living answer that you are? You are where infinity meets the finite, where the eternal encounters time, where boundless consciousness experiences itself through bounded forms. You are not in the universe. You are the universe becoming conscious of itself, the cosmos awakening to its own infinite nature through the miracle of human awareness. Rest now in this understanding, this recognition, this homecoming to what you have always been, but perhaps temporarily forgot. The exploration continues even in sleep, perhaps especially in sleep, where consciousness is free to play with forms and possibilities that daylight awareness can barely imagine. But whether sleeping or waking, dreaming or alert, you remain always what you have always been, infinite awareness temporarily focused through finite experience, boundless love temporarily expressed through bounded relationships, eternal presence temporarily participating in the flow of time. The edge of infinity surrounds you now not as a boundary, but as an embrace, not as a limitation, but as the creative space where anything and everything becomes possible. Sleep peacefully, knowing that this edge is not somewhere you go, but who you are, not something you find, but what finds itself through your seeking, not a destination, but the eternal source from which all journeys begin and to which they all return. Sweet dreams, dear infinity exploring itself through finite form, dear boundless awareness playing at being bounded, dear eternal love experiencing the poignancy of temporal beauty. May your dreams tonight be filled with the wonder and creativity of consciousness celebrating its own unlimited nature, and may your rest be the perfect peace of awareness resting in its own essential nature, forever free, forever whole, forever home in the infinite mystery of being itself. The journey into sleep is the journey into the heart of the mystery we've been exploring together. Rest well, knowing that you carry within you the answer to every question, the resolution to every paradox, the peace that passes all understanding. You are the edge of infinity, the place where the infinite meets itself in finite form. And in recognizing this, all seeking comes to its natural completion in the simple recognition of what was always already perfectly present. Sleep now, and dream the dreams of infinite consciousness exploring its own boundless nature through the beautiful, temporary, absolutely precious lens of your individual existence. Rest well in the knowledge that you are held always and forever in the love that you are, the awareness that you are, the infinity that you are and have always been, regardless of what dreams may come and go in the endless creativity of this eternal moment. Sweet dreams, sweet rest, sweet return to the source that you never actually left but only seemed to lose sight of in the beautiful game of seeking and finding that consciousness plays with itself through forms like you, expressions like you, beloved manifestations like you of its own infinite, edgeless, eternally creative nature. Rest now. All is well. All has always been well. All will always be well in the infinite love that dreams all dreams, awakens in all awakening, and rests in all rest, forever and always, world without end. Sweet dreams.